Welcome to the Holy Maneuver Podcast. I'm Mark.
And I'm Mike. We're two hardworking dads trying to immerse ourselves in Star Wars and fit it into our very busy lives.
If this is your first time listening in the short-form Star Wars podcast, we'll share our thoughts on different topics from a galaxy far, far away.
Hey Mark, what's Jar Jar Binks' favorite meal?
I don't know. I can't remember what he ate in the movies.
He ate miso soup. I think he also
All right.
ate fish. That's just...
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. He definitely ate whole apples too, I remember. But yeah, this week, episode 18 of Hold the Maneuver. Our first week in a while not talking about Mr. Obi-Wan Kenobi himself. This week we're talking about the documentary In Search of Tomorrow, which is the definitive 80s sci-fi documentary. We're going to be talking about that in a little bit. But first, I'm going to talk about some of the news since the last time we recorded. The first bit of news, as we talked about this a little bit a few weeks ago around the time of when Celebration was going on. So with this, it's basically just kind of like an update of everything we know so far about that Skeleton Crew show. So with this, a lot of these shows that they're doing, we don't know much of like the specifics other than it's like this is described as a galactic version of like a classic Amblin coming of age adventure film of the 80s. So say it's in theme with this episode of what we're talking about. But it's going to focus on a group of younglings on basically think Stand By Me by way of Star Wars. That's what it... Yeah,
I'm looking at this article, just kind of perusing it again, and I got a pop-up, and it's Weird Science where they're watching her in the shower. It's just like, what? Why is that happening right now?
It's targeted ads because it knows that was within the documentary that we watched. But yeah, and with this, there's not too much more else known other than it's going to be coming out with like in the next year or so. Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, and Chris Ford have also signed on as executive producers. It's being directed by John Watts after he dropped out of doing the Fantastic Four film, and it's expected to begin filming soon using like the volume and stagecraft technology that has been used in Mando and Boba and now Obi-Wan.
Right. And
it's supposed, yeah, like they said, it comes out sometime in 2023. And the only other thing we know about the show is that Jude Law is in it. And other than that, we don't know jack squat.
Which is funny because this article's like, everything we need to know about it. And it's like, we don't know anything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
No, I'm kind of excited for that concept. The coming of age Star Wars show. Amblin style, not Stranger Things style.
Yeah. Like, kind of... So, Super 8 came out before Stranger Things started, but what's funny is if you were to tell like a younger kid now to go back and watch Super 8, they'd probably tell you that they thought Super 8 ripped off Stranger Things.
Well, yeah. You could say that something ripped off something. That's always the case.
Yeah. All great stories are retellings of other stories.
I think it was David Lynch who said, "Sure, that story's been told, but not by you or not by whoever told it." So.
Yeah, and we'll get into that a little bit too later on with kind of our point of reference for how we're talking about the In Search of Tomorrow film, and basically, it's from a certain point of view how Star Wars influenced these different sci-fi films of the 80s after the first Star Wars film came out in 1977.
But baffled by. I thought it came out in 76, and I don't know why. Like, in my head, when I saw Star Wars 77, I was like, oh, that's a typo. And then they kept doing it.
You just thought it was a very patriotic film.
I guess.
But yeah, so that's all of our news about the Skeleton Crew. Oh, this next story, it's not so much a story, but it was an article by our buddy Adam Frazier, who was on the podcast recently, talking with us about Obi-Wan. And he does this weekly article over at Slash Film where he kind of rounds up all of the Star Wars news from the week and collects it all there on that website. My puppet Sylvie wanted to say hi to everybody. I don't know if you can hear her shaking around.
I had opened my door. My Wi-Fi signal dropped.
Oh, no worries. We'll keep all this in. Everyone, you can peer behind the curtain. So this is like a really good place to go to, especially if you love Star Wars like us. His article that he puts together finds basically, if you want to find out what happened in Star Wars news this week, you go to his post, you find it all there. So he's got stuff there about
a ton of stuff.
Yeah, Marvel's upcoming Star Wars comics. So there's more stuff in there about like the Inquisitors and Vader and Obi-Wan in there as well. There's the Princess and the Scoundrel.
There's a video essay about Boba Fett.
Oh yeah, there's some stuff in there from the Star Wars Explained show talking about the new book, Shadows of the Sith. He also usually puts in some stuff from our friends over at Live Action Star Wars channel. He puts in like their video there as well. One of the things I saw in here that I thought was pretty cool was the Lego Star Wars BD-1 review. I might want to pick that Lego up just because it's one of like the droids from the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order video game. And it's basically kind of like a 1-for-1 size-wise. It's pretty much the size of BD.
Right.
Like what he would be if he, or she. I don't know if you'd give a gender to a droid, because they don't exactly have parts or anything. But...
well, they did in Solo. They made...
leads.
It was voiced by a woman. That I guess it doesn't mean it was female.
Oh, yeah. Phoebe... Phoebe Waller-Cates, I think, is from Fleabag. Right. But yeah, and obviously 3PO. Anyways, BD Lego set looks pretty cool. I want to check it out, and I'll definitely place a link to this in our show notes too. Did you see any news stories in there that stuck out to you from what he wrote about?
Nothing specific. I mean, it's all great. I mean, I read all of them, and I haven't watched the videos yet myself, but it's just all interesting. There's the homemade Star Tours thing. I want to watch that. It looks like, based on just the thumbnail of the video, it's like a cardboard box spaceship, and it's homemade Disneyland Star Tours attractions. I kind of want to see what that's all about. I just haven't watched that yet.
Oh yeah, I remember seeing an article about that specifically because like a dad made that for their kid for their birthday. I was like, that's pretty awesome. I wish I could be that cool of a dad to make a indoor Star Tours for my kid. Although now he's too old for me to do something like that. He'd probably think I was stupid doing something like that.
Let's be honest. He would have thought you were stupid when he did.
No.
No, I'm kidding.
Maybe at a certain threshold. I don't know. But yeah.
I don't know. There's all kinds of crazy stuff you can do that I wish I had the prowess to do as well.
Yeah, like sometimes, like when I see these costumes some of these dads do for like different kids that are like in wheelchairs and stuff, and then like they incorporate that into like their Halloween costumes, like
right.
Or I've seen like they turn it like into like the X-Wing or like the Snowspeeder or something like that. I think that's like a cool way just to like make those costumes stand out, or just really cool that some people are actually like that handy and can like do stuff like that.
I am not.
Yeah, so if you are, we applaud you.
And then the other thing is, like, I've just been thinking about it a lot since watching this series. The Good of Boba Fett, that video essay I mentioned.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about Boba Fett in a little bit, but it just, the more I think about it, the more I watch stuff, and just the more that comes out, the more I realize Boba Fett wasn't really that big of a badass.
Oh, yeah.
In the original stuff.
Like, yeah, I'll kind of just talk about it right here. Like, I enjoyed the Boba Fett show for the most part because I never had like a super attachment to Boba Fett like a lot of people did. Like,
yeah, neither did I.
Like he looked cool, I guess. But like I had
Mandalorian-ness of him was cool.
Yeah, and I had like the action, like the 1997 like Power of the Force action figure of Boba Fett. I still have it somewhere in this room, probably. But
like, what's he do in the original trilogy? He captures Han and falls in a Sarlacc pit.
Yeah, and he stands there and gets yelled at by Vader for no disintegrations.
Yeah,
and then he kind of hangs out in Jabba's sail barge, just kind of standing around. He puts his hand on one of the ladies' chins and it's like, hey. We have a history that no one will ever see.
There's that Christmas special that I've never seen.
Oh yeah.
I watch it once, and the pirated version that we found in college was so terrible that we turned it off.
Oh yeah, I have the DVD of that in here in this room, but actually the cartoon that had Boba Fett in it, where he debuted, that cartoon segment specifically is actually on Disney Plus. They cut that part and placed that specifically on Disney Plus.
Like burn that special.
Yeah, there's a quote on the DVD for that. I don't know if it's actually a quote that George Lucas said, but it says, if I had a hammer and was able to get every copy of this, I would destroy each and every one of them with it.
He chose that over Howard the Duck.
I don't know. Howard the Duck has its merits. We will get to it. But speaking of Howard the Duck, this is not really a segue at all, other than to say these last two stories we're just going to kind of tease the headline, and then if you want to check out more of what they're about, you can go to our show notes on whatever podcast you're using to follow the link there. But there you will see Simon Pegg brought up and kind of discussed how Star Wars fandom is the most toxic at the moment, and it's really sad. So this is a recent interview that he did Fourth Variety posted it, where he just kind of talked about that a little bit. The one thing I will say to this is I love Simon Pegg movies, and I love like all the work that he's done, but he doesn't exactly help the situation sometimes with the way that he's talked about the prequels back in the day. Mm-hmm. And even like recently, but like, and specifically on the Edgar Wright series that he was on as Spaced, mm-hmm. with how they kind of made fun of the prequels on that. And I know that's slightly different than being toxic as like a fandom in general, more so than just being like critical of something you enjoy. But I think that's also where like this is slanted more recently, where it started as that, and then over like the past 2 years or so, it's kind of just like slid down this slippery slope of a hill from
and it's not just Star Wars. Star Wars is just the biggest fandom. So
yeah, it's like fandom in general for
fandom in general. People just
anything
can't be satisfied, and like they have too many expectations. And
yeah, there's a podcast that I listen to called the Ringerverse, where there's a group that does a show on that called the Midnight Boys, and they were calling this summer the summer of no expectations, which I kind of like, because like when you go into something, if you're not expecting anything, or if you don't build up what you want to happen in whatever you're going to watch, you're not going to be disappointed when whatever you had already built up and designed that sequence and scene in the movie in your head doesn't happen, that you weren't ever actually promised.
Right.
Then you're not going to be disappointed because of that.
And I remember, this is going into the stand-up world, I was watching, maybe it was Comedians in Cars, or just an old Seinfeld interview with Howard Stern. And Stern goes, well, how do you deal with people's expectations when they come to your show and aren't happy? And Seinfeld's like, that's on them. Like, that's not my problem. Like, I'm going to do what I like feel is best, and if you have expectations, that's your fault. Like,
yeah.
I'm one who has succumbed to expectations. I'm not going to lie. I've gotten way better than I used to be. Now I try to, like, not read anything about, like, oh, this is coming out, I want to see it. That's the most I'll read about it until it comes out. That's kind of my take, to keep my expectations down. And I'll have hopes and wants. Like Obi-Wan, I had huge wants and desires, and they were all met. So I can say they met my expectations, and I'm happy. But and just in general, if you just go in thinking, I want to enjoy this for what it is, you'll just be so much happier.
Yeah. And kind of going off what you said, like, even like from like some of the, like, one of the things my therapist had said was that you can't control how people react to things. You can only control how you react to them.
Right.
And then you just have to kind of, let go of, like, whatever, how anybody else reacts to something. That's not, like, your responsibility for however somebody else reacts to something. But speaking of how someone else has reacted to something, John Boyega gave kind of a review of what he thought of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. He was a huge fan of Star Wars before he became Finn in the most recent, like, Star Wars sequel trilogy.
Talk about toxic fandom.
Yeah. The same way Moses Ingram got it for Reva, he definitely got it for Finn as well. And again, the people that do that are definitely not Star Wars fans at all, and they don't understand what Star Wars is about if they're going to get upset about that kind of stuff. So, but I'll put the link to this in there.
In Star Wars. That's made abundantly clear from the get-go.
It's a huge galaxy. But I'll put the link for the full story of this in there, but I'm just going to share, like, a brief quote what he said. He said, I think it was fun. It was good to see Ewan McGregor. It was good to see, our guy, Anakin. Well, my guy, Anakin. My guy, back. For him to have more nuance and have more story as well was just, for me, just phenomenal just to see. So it's cool to especially see, like, John Boyega talk highly of Hayden Christensen as Anakin. And you can tell how much, like, the prequel films meant to him, too, because he's a little bit younger of a guy. I know he's a little bit younger than us, you and I. He's not, I don't think he's too much, maybe he's, like, 10 years younger or so, maybe 6 or so. But he's kind of, like,
6.
within, so he's kind of within, like, the same generation.
My brother's
that,
age.
Yeah, like, grew up with, the prequels. So for us, those are, like, the movies that came out as we were growing up, because episode 1 came out, we were around, well, it came out on your 13th birthday,
right?
And then I think Revenge of the Sith came out on your birthday too. It was only Attack of the Clones that didn't come out on your birthday.
That was the best one of the 3, in my opinion.
George was like, well, you're not getting this one on your birthday. These 2 you can, but not that one. But yeah, that's John Boyega's thoughts on Obi-Wan Kenobi. But from there, we are now going to move into our main topic, which is for the documentary In Search of Tomorrow, which was a crowdfunded and backed film. I was one of the backers to this, so I ended up getting they sent me a physical copy of the Blu-ray for it. I believe you watched the digital copy I got of it. Right.
I found a digital copy through my various means.
Yeah. But I'll read like a brief kind of synopsis about like
Had
what
I known
the
about it, I
documentary
would have
is.
backed in some fashion.
Oh yeah, I think I found out about it like maybe like the last week that it was available to like back it at that time still. But yeah, because Adam, who was on the show, I had saw that he had posted about it and shared something about it. So if you watch the credits of this movie, you'll see both Adam's name, and if you watch for maybe about 5, 6, 7 more minutes, you'll eventually see my name show up in there.
Didn't we look for our names in what Jay and Silent Bob or Clerks 2?
Yeah, Clerks 2, because we were MySpace friends with the movie. Remember MySpace, really kids? Ourselves. Yeah, that's where I met my wife.
Still a
but
thing,
in search of
still a thing.
Yeah. Hey, Tom. In Search of Tomorrow is a 5-hour love letter to 80s sci-fi cinema, nostalgic exploration of the impact and relevance of these beloved film classics, guided by iconic artists who made them and by those who were inspired by their futuristic visions. So, what this documentary does as well too is that it kind of breaks it down by like a year-by-year chapter discussion topics for that. So I thought that was kind of cool. So like what I did to watch this was I watched 1980 through 1983 one night, and then I watched 84 through 86 another night, and then last night I finished 87 through 89. So I broke it up to that way to kind of watch it. Did you do something similar or did you
just would be like, okay, I'm stopping here for the night, and then come back to it.
Yeah, it was easy to do because it is very episodic in a way that
was gonna
a documentary can be.
Critiques of it is maybe this should have been a multi-part thing, not one whole.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of arduous at times to watch this. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I think maybe the best way to watch it is to maybe either just break it up, like watch it, like say I'm gonna watch 1980. Like if you think of these as like 10 episodes, like of like what you'd watch like on Netflix as a docuseries, then it's like a 10 episode docuseries in that way, but it's just presented this way as like one whole film. But now with this too, like our next episode is going to be about the Light and Magic docuseries that's going to be on Disney Plus soon, and that kind of lends itself to this documentary as well too, just because of how much influence Industrial Light and Magic had, not only from when it opened on May 26th of 1975 and was used to, as the effects for the original Star Wars film that Lucas made. And I thought like one of the things that I liked, you and I think we talked about it off mic, but one of the things that like Will Wheaton says in this documentary was that Spielberg and Lucas had wanted to move away from the kind of dystopian sci-fi films of like the 50s and 60s and 70s and go towards more of the spectacle and wonder of like the retro future and promise of tomorrow type sci-fi, which I definitely can see. And I think if you would want to give any filmmakers of the 80s, like if you had to pick only 2 filmmakers that kind of ruled the 80s for sci-fi, I would definitely say it was Spielberg and Lucas between the Star Wars films. And
I mean, ruled by the sense that they struck gold with just about everything they released.
Yeah.
You could argue Leonard Nimoy up there because of all the Star Trek movies he made.
Yeah. Yeah, and like not only stuff that they produced, but also that they directed, like between like the Back to the Future films and E.T. and all of that.
Like I had no idea Leonard Nimoy directed that many Star Treks. I'm not a Star Trek guy. I've never watched more than 20 minutes of it. It just was something that didn't appeal to me.
I've only recently started watching some Star Trek. Like I've seen like all the more recent films with like Chris Pine in them and Simon Pegg. And then I've seen like the first four like original series films. So like,
I mean, this
Star Trek: The Motion
documentary made
Picture.
me want to watch Star Trek 4. That looked like that might be a fun time.
Oh, the Voyage Home.
Yeah.
A double dumbass on you.
Yeah.
I got to see that in theaters last year because they did a anniversary screening of that, so that was kind of cool. And I think they're going to be doing that for Wrath of Khan later this year. But I guess the best thing to do is with this is kind of, I guess, basically do it the way that the documentary did and go year by year and break it down, like just like some stuff that stood out to us. So obviously, the first year was 1980, and it was Empire Strikes Back for that year. And that film is still my favorite Star Wars film that's been released. And they don't talk about too much of it, but they do a little bit of an interview with Billy D. Williams there. And he talks about how he never saw Lando as a bad guy, just a guy that was dealing with
A situation.
the situation that was like handed to him, basically. I thought that was interesting too, like the whole thing about Harrison Ford signed on to each movie individually.
Like,
yeah, so like that's why like he's putting the carbonite so that if he didn't come back for Return of the Jedi, well then he just stays in the carbonite and
he
doesn't
wanted
get thought out.
Lucas to kill him off.
Yeah, eventually he
got
spoiler. He eventually got that in Force Awakens, but I thought that was interesting. Like they don't go too in depth on any one of the films, just kind of more of like the cultural impact each movie had in there. Did anything from the Empire stuff that they had on here
the Go Motion
stand out to you?
Like when they talked about how like they named it Go Motion because what's the opposite of stop motion? But they wanted to change it, and then they never did. That was just humorous to me. But when they were telling the story about I'm hoping to see more of this in the ILM docuseries, like them doing their work back in the 80s. That was what was really fascinating about this series, was when they showed the behind the scenes stuff. Not really the people talking about it, but the actual footage of the guys popping up from the floor, moving stuff, and then hiding under the floor. And I
did like that they did talk to Phil Tippett and John Knoll from ILM. So that was cool to get some brief talk with them, even if it was just a little sliver of a bit with them. The other thing I thought was interesting was this film that I haven't seen, the Galaxina. That one, yeah. But like from some of the stuff they showed in there, they said that it like paid homage to like the cantina scene from the original Star Wars. And then that made me start thinking about the film Spaceballs, which is later in the documentary, which for whatever reason I thought that movie came out in the 90s.
It was close.
Yeah, I mean it was close enough, but like there's some stuff in there too, because they said there's like this thing with like aliens in that too, or like so it's almost like the same kind of stuff that like Spaceballs did with Star Wars and like sci-fi in general that this Galaxina movie did too. And then Flash Gordon from 1980.
I thought Flash Gordon came out in like the 60s.
Well, the original Flash Gordon serials that Lucas more or less kind of based like the premise of like of what Star Wars is supposed to kind of be, or it's supposed to be like a Saturday morning serial that would have been on like around the 50s or so. That even had like that scrolling text before the episode that he would use in Star Wars. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so like this Flash Gordon movie is like a kind of, it was supposed to be like a modern,
right,
quote unquote modern retelling of like the whole thing, and it's the Flash Gordon that Mark Wahlberg and Ted love in the Ted movies, and it's got the that classic Queen song. Flash.
I wasn't sure if it was about this movie or the 30s one. That's what I was trying to figure out in my head. I never looked it up because I'm lazy, but No,
but that's kind of like, yeah, like a snake eating its own tail, where like this Flash Gordon was influenced by Star Wars, which was influenced by the original Flash Gordon.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of interesting.
And then going back, I just wanted to say, like, I never thought of it this way, of Spielberg and Lucas changing sci-fi with what they did, because I remember having arguments with people when they would tell me, like, oh, Lord of the Rings is sci-fi, because I always thought I hated sci-fi outside of Star Wars. Like, because I was always thinking about the 50s and 60s sci-fi, which bored the crap out of me.
I would not consider Lord of the Rings sci-fi, though. That's more fantasy.
Yeah. That was my point. But just thinking about, like, I remember getting the argument, like, there's different types of sci-fi. There's Star Trek and Star Wars. And
be like, you got a wizard? That's fantasy. You got a cyborg? That's sci-fi.
Yeah. You got a wizard cyborg? What the hell are you watching? And where do I find
sci-fantasy? But yeah, going from there, there wasn't too much in 1981 that I saw. There was Superman 2, which would, use more of like the special effects and whatnot that were, pioneered from the original Star Wars film, and Empire used to make it look even better with Christopher Reeve flying in that film. But 1982 would have Spielberg's E.T., which had direct references to Yoda from Empire Strikes Back. I
didn't realize it was 82.
Yeah. Well, because this year it's
40 years old.
Oh man, 40th anniversary. Or is it 40 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because Tron came out that same year, and that's 40th anniversary this year too. Which, side note, everybody, E.T. will be playing in IMAX theaters next month in August. Mm-hmm. So if you ever want to see it in IMAX,
if you want to cry in IMAX.
Yeah, and then E.T. would later show up. Well, E.T.'s alien species showed up in the Senate in the prequel trilogy. And that led to people with theories that E.T. was a Jedi, and that's why he had like the heal force powers, and how he could like levitate stuff.
Anyone can be a Jedi.
Yeah, and he was from a galaxy far, far away.
He's to be captured as a child.
So, do you have any other additional thoughts on E.T. at all?
I did, but I forgot it.
Through the wonder of editing, it's been a few minutes. But, yeah.
It was something to do with...
E.T. is a Jedi. That's
we were talking about that. And I just mentioned that as long as you kidnap him as a child, he could be a Jedi.
Yeah, that's how it works. You kidnap someone as a child, and then become a Jedi, right?
Yep.
So whenever you see an Amber Alert, know that kid will be a Jedi. And now that we've joked about kids getting kidnapped, let's move to Blade Runner. Or Star Trek 2. Which one? Wrath of Khan.
Wrath of Khan is supposedly the best Star Trek movie ever. Never seen it.
It's pretty good. I can't say one way or the other. Just maybe it's really, really, really good if you have like all the established lore of, because I know it's technically kind of also like a sequel to one of the episodes of the original series, because Ricardo Montalban showed up in an episode of the original series as that character. So that would almost be like, say you watched, I guess the biggest equivalent would be like with the Clone Wars, and now with like Ahsoka getting like her own show or something like that.
Well, I mean, they flat out said in the documentary they only made these movies because of the popularity of Star Wars. Like, they had no intentions of doing that until Star Wars proved that, we can make money doing this.
Yeah. It's like, wait a minute. Our TV show came out before the movie.
Right.
It's too bad that the Star Trek The Motion Picture is like a really boring movie. There's like nothing happens in that movie at all.
That's my problem.
I think there's... Well, that's really only that movie.
Well, that's why I've never tried another one. Is like...
Yeah, it's kind of. I would say almost to start with Wrath of Khan, and then go from there. Just because
something
like
modern, I did that with. Like yeah, I can barely watch the first season of The Office. Like it was so hard for me to watch that show because the first season, I just couldn't get over, and I just forced myself one day. And
that's the first season of Parks and Recreation for me.
I can agree with that.
Everybody remember the character Mark from the first season of Parks and Recreation? No, you don't.
He was in more than one season, wasn't he?
Was he?
Mark Brandano?
I don't know that. I know that they were setting him up as Leslie Knope's like kind of like love interest, but once Adam Scott came on the show as Ben Wyatt, that kind of moved.
Mark Brandano's character was pretty just
yeah. Plus he spelled his name with a K, so there's that. But yeah, going from Star Trek going into Blade Runner in 1982, which had good old Harrison Ford in it, good old Han Solo. Now, I want to say, did you watch this in film school too?
We talked about it. We never watched it.
Okay, because I want to say that I watched this. I don't remember if it was in community college or if it was at Oswego that I watched it. But I remember watching it in one. Oh man, have you seen 2049?
Nope, didn't want to watch that without watching this.
Oh man, okay. Well, I would definitely recommend it. It is kind of a slow 80s sci-fi movie is the best way to describe it.
I laughed in the documentary where they're like, we recorded the voiceover to be terrible because we didn't want to do it, and then they're like, the studio loved it.
Oh man. Well, and what's interesting too is if you like some of the stuff they did for the Blu-ray more recently in the 4K sets, between like the original cut of the movie and like the final cut, like where they've updated some stuff, it's interesting to check some of that stuff out that Ridley Scott did with that.
Yeah.
And just like some of like the ideas in there too, and it's definitely a really beautifully shot film. And then 2049 definitely is too, because Deakins did the cinematography on that, and he's a great cinematographer. Harrison Ford came back for that one too.
Like 2049, I remember watching the trailer, and like it was visually stunning. But I was like, I haven't seen Blade Runner, I can't watch this. So.
There's a good documentary about the makings of specifically of Blade Runner too. So, although I don't know if I'd recommend watching a making of documentary for a film that you haven't seen yet though too. But yeah, Blade Runner, it definitely is a slow movie, but I would definitely recommend it if you ever get the chance to watch it. And it's Harrison Ford. Yeah, it's Harrison Ford in 1980 sci-fi movie, so yeah, it's got that going for it. And speaking of Harrison Ford in a 1980 sci-fi movie, Return of the Jedi in 1983. Now,
Deep Roy was in Return of the Jedi. Mind blowing.
Oh yeah, you didn't know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
The Oompa Loompa from Tim Burton's Willy Wonka, or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, rather, was in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, he was. He was an Ewok. He would have to have been like a kid, like the same as Warwick Davis was.
Don't know.
Because Warwick Davis was a kid when they shot that as well. And one of the things that I was like, wow, this is cool. I learned something new from this that I did not know about Return of the Jedi before. So we kind of teased this a little while ago, was that apparently when Return of the Jedi was titled as Revenge of the Jedi, it was more about Boba Fett as the antagonist chasing Luke, Leia, and Han as like the main baddie of the film. And then Lucas decided he wanted to truncate the story because he, at least in 1983, said he didn't want to make any more Star Wars movies. So that I guess apparently, maybe originally, like a 7, 8, or 9 would have had Vader in it longer.
Right.
Before being redeemed, but he said that he wanted to end it with 6, so that's where he would end with the redemption of Anakin / Vader, rather than doing the whole Boba Fett story. So all of Boba Fett's story that they were kind of setting up between 4 and 5, they're like, nah, he can get eaten in the Sarlacc.
Yeah, and that's what he does. And, like, this badass character is just
die, quote unquote. But yeah,
they give him his story in the prequels as being son of the Jango Fett.
Jango Fett, yeah.
Well, just not really the son of. He is Jango Fett. He's just a clone that he was allowed to raise as a son.
Yeah. Was there anything else in here when they talked about Return of the Jedi that
I don't know if it was when they were talking about Return of the Jedi or just Deep Roy talking again when they were talking about special effects? How him and the guy who played R2 would get too drunk.
Kenny Baker?
Yeah, when they get so drunk that
yeah.
He got mad at Kenny Baker because he got to hide in the R2 costume all day.
Oh yeah, and one of the things I thought was cool on here too was Billy D's son was in the film as well. Mm-hmm. And he would like stand in for his dad, and then he was a costumed character that got to become an action figure. So he thought that was cool. But yeah, that was some of the cool stuff that I was like. I didn't expect to like learn anything new from the documentary.
The fact that then when all the space fighting, they'd film each ship by itself, and then you watch that sequence when it's done, you're like, God damn.
Yeah.
That took a lot of time.
Crazy, like how much patience and just like ingenuity it took to put those films together. Mm-hmm. So going from there to 1984, some of these just going to kind of talk about briefly. Was The Last Starfighter. Have you seen that?
I have. I just don't remember it.
There's So I know you've seen the Clerks animated series. You remember the episode where Randall beat the video game arcade?
Yeah.
And like had to go help, like with building the pyramids. Mm-hmm. So like that Clerks episode is basically like if you mix Temple of Doom with The Last Starfighter. But like this whole film definitely was highly influenced by Star Wars, just between like. Like the Rebel, like dogfighting stuff in that as well. And then with Dune that came out that year as well, like the books for Dune came out much earlier than Star Wars did. And you can see different things like in Star Wars that were influenced specifically by Dune. Like there's the whole like dust smuggling, which is like almost like a direct reference to dust in Dune. And then you have like basically like this chosen one who has to like learn basically like magical powers more or less to defeat this emperor guy. There's a princess, so you can see like how all this kind of stuff is directly somewhat homaged and like taken from Dune a little bit for Star Wars.
Yeah, I struggle with Lynch movies, so Dune, I started it once and I never picked it back up.
Yeah, I feel bad because I went and saw this one in theaters a few years ago at when we had an Alamo Draft House around here, and they were playing it on film. So I was like, I gotta go see if they have it playing on film and through like a film projector there. And I fell asleep. and then woke up like halfway from the ending. And I don't think I've gone back to watch the rest of it since. I saw the
new one,
Denis Villeneuve recent one. I watched all that. I didn't fall asleep.
See, I didn't go see it because of how I felt during the first Dune. And I'm mad because it was supposedly amazing. Yeah,
it's very good. I would highly suggest checking that one out. It's definitely a part one of a story. So like, don't go in expecting it to be like wrapped up by the end of it.
No, I've read enough about how they're planning on making another one and all that.
Yeah.
But not so much to where the movie would be ruined.
Yeah. 84 had Star Trek 3, like you had said, Leonard Nimoy, Search for Spock. 1985 had my favorite film of all time, came out, Back to the Future.
I always forget that. What the hell's his name? Why am I drawing a blank on his name? Michael J. Fox was not the first. First.
Oh yeah, Eric Stoltz.
Yeah. And he was first choice, and then but he couldn't do it, or wasn't allowed to do it, or something. I always forget.
Yeah, what's funny is that we just talked about it, but Star Trek 3, the bad guy was Christopher Lloyd.
Yep, he's been in every. He's in so much in the '80s. I never realized.
Yeah, and then Christopher Lloyd's going to be in the new season of Mandalorian coming up too. So Christopher Lloyd's in everything, and he is a awesome person. And Patrick will always remember when he leaned over to him and he said, "Great Scott." Mm-hmm. So I thank him for that.
You don't have that on here.
Oh yeah, I did not put that on there. It came out
for good reason.
The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Through the Eighth Dimension came out in 1984. Also 1984 was Ghostbusters with. I was trying to, as I was getting later on here, I was trying to stuff that was more closer to I
get your rankings.
Like space.
Calling you out for not. But Christopher Lloyd was in Buckaroo Banzai. Same with John Lithgow.
Yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to briefly touch on Back to the Future, mostly just because it was my favorite movie of all time. Spielberg produced it, so again, the influence of Star Wars in that, and obviously I'm Darth Vader from the planet Vulcan. Mm-hmm. I come to melt your brain. So, there's Star Wars within Back to the Future. 1980s.
Star Trek within Back to the Future.
Yeah, it's all wrapped within a shell. 1986 was a good year. Two of us arrived on Earth at that year. That year also saw James Cameron's Aliens, the Disney film Flight of the Navigator with Paul Rubens as the voice of the spaceship in that, which would basically then, yeah, and then that would directly influence him being the droid Rex for the Star Tours ride at Back to the Future at Disneyland. And then we got the George Lucas produced film Howard the Duck. I'm gonna let Mike talk on this for a moment.
Howard the Duck. Nothing like a horny duck coming to Earth. Why? The point of it was he gets beamed down to Earth, fish out of water story, and he's a ladies' man on his planet, so he's a ladies' man on Earth. So I think it's Leia Thompson. They have Howard try to seduce in the movie, and she calls his bluff. There's all kinds of adult humor in this. Like, she finds a condom in his wallet, a duck-sized condom. There's full fun duck.
Yeah, I was gonna say fun fact. We'll do this on safe search incognito mode. Search what a duck's member would look like. And that's all I'll say. That for what that condom would have to go on. I'm not going to get into any more specifics on that. I'm just saying incognito mode, safe search. So
then he watched Two Girls, One Cup, folks. That's what he did next.
No.
But
anyways,
I remember being allowed to rent this movie as a child, like a young child.
Yeah, it's definitely 1980s. What was it? PG? Yeah, it was 1980s PG.
Well, did this come out? When did Raiders come out?
It was the first Marvel movie too.
True.
The first movie that came out based on a Marvel character was Howard the Duck.
When did Raiders come out?
Raiders of the Lost Ark came out in... let me check. I believe that was 84. I'm gonna check Raiders of the Lost
81.
Ark. Oh, wait, I was way off.
Was it that?
81.
Or the
Yeah,
second Indiana Jones movie?
Oh, Temple of Doom was the PG-13.
Yeah, Temple of Doom. Steven Spielberg came up with PG-13. That's
Yeah.
and
84 was Temple of Doom.
So that was PG-13 was around, and Howard the Duck still didn't make PG-13. And my parents saw a puppet duck, and were like, "You can watch this when you're 8."
They're like, "Here you go, duck boobs."
I don't remember seeing that when because I remember watching Howard the Duck and being like, "This is terrible," when I was young. But I don't remember the duck boobs. Maybe they were edited out of the VHS. I don't know.
But 1980s PG movies are definitely different than 2022 PG movies. Yep. But from there, 1986 also had Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home.
This one makes me want to watch Star Trek based on how it's more comedic.
Yeah, and it's definitely, and it's like more of like a time travel film, like Fish Out of Water, pun intended. Save the whales. But it like takes place in 1986.
Whales are mammals.
Yeah. Well, I know that. It was a joke. Yeah, I liked Star Trek 4 a lot. Like I said, I got to see that in theaters a couple of years ago or last year, whatever.
One thing with Star Trek,
time is this construct.
I didn't realize was I thought Shatner was done with it way sooner than he was. Like I thought Patrick Stewart took over in the mid '80s, not in the '90s.
Oh yeah, that didn't happen until they did the film Generations, where it was, where like they kind of crossed over, and I haven't seen it, but I think Shatner. Well, I think Kirk dies in that movie. I think.
Yeah, he dies in one of them. I know that much.
Yeah.
But I thought.
But moving on,
Patrick Stewart was a lot sooner. Anyway.
1987, we got Spaceballs, which obviously is wholly and directly influenced by Star Wars,
and all kinds of other sci-fi, but mostly Star Wars.
Yeah, one of Mel Brooks's best movies. You got Rick Moranis in there as Dark Helmet.
I believe in this documentary, someone said it was peak Rick Moranis before he became a Canadian country music singer.
Yeah, and 2 years before Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And 3 years after Ghostbusters. So the 80s were definitely hitting it up for Rick Moranis on all levels there. But yeah, obviously, like Spaceballs, if you like Star Wars and you have never seen Spaceballs, I would highly recommend.
And it's funny because of the jokes about merchandising in Spaceballs. The only reason why Spaceballs was allowed to be made was because they signed a contract with George Lucas saying, "We won't sell merchandise."
That's funny. Well, and then that in of itself is also a joke too, because the whole deal that Lucas made when he made the first Star Wars movie was
he gets all the merchandise.
not for a percentage of the film, but like for like all of the money from the merchandising for it.
And
so
he's a billionaire.
Yeah, that was definitely a smart move. Then the next one is brought to you by Paul Rudd in the year 1988 for the film Mac and Me. And if you know, you know. And I'm just going to move on to 1989.
I never saw the movie, but I've seen that clip 1,000 times.
Yeah, that's wholly how I know Mac and Me. And that the other thing I know about that is that it was a movie produced by McDonald's. That's why it's called Mac and Me.
Hey, and I used to play a video game on NES, sponsored by
MC
McDonald's.
Kids.
Yep.
That was a good game. And basically, Mac. If you've seen E.T.,
you've seen Mac and Me.
What if McDonald's made E.T.? that's Mac and me. So you can watch that, and then you can go play some MC Kids on your NES. Yeah, mine is in the other room. And then in in 1989, brought us Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and Back to the Future Part 2. And just like how basically how we started off the conversation, where now Lucas and Spielberg didn't make this movie for Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, but like how they had wanted to move away from like the dystopian future and move to more of like the promise of tomorrow. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is like wholly and fundamentally like about that. And fun fact, where I live now, most of this movie was shot too. So like,
I was going to ask you that because they talk about film. They mentioned Phoenix. Ted.
Yeah.
No, is it Bill? Bill's in the.
I've been to Alex Winter. Like I've been to the bowling alley, because that was where the bowling lane was for a company I used to work for. The mall, I've been there, but that recently got closed down. The Circle K from that literally just got closed like maybe a month or two ago, like just before June 9th, which is Bill and Ted Day. So you can probably guess why June 9th is Bill and Ted Day.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a bummer that closed. And then the water park that Napoleon's at, and that is called Golfland Sunsplash. That's like right on the main highway here. So like when Napoleon's up on the top of that slide, you can see this main highway that's the 60 that I basically drive on like every day. So the next time you watch Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, just know that road that's behind Napoleon, I've driven that many times. And they were supposed to come back here to film part 3 when they were doing that, and for what I think it was just because that Louisiana had better tax incentives.
Yeah, Louisiana and
they
Georgia
ended up
give like
filming
crazy
it
tax
there.
breaks.
But yeah, and so that's gonna kind of like wrap up our discussion on this documentary. There is one bonus feature on the Blu-ray, which it's like a discussion with the creators of In Search of Tomorrow. So if you have the Blu-ray or if you have access to it, I would suggest checking that out. That discussion is more or less kind of like what you and I are doing. It was like a recorded Zoom meeting, so it's definitely from within like the past couple of years. And just talks about the making of the movie. Was there any kind of like final thoughts you had on like the documentary as a whole before we wrap up?
How'd they talk to Deep Roy and not Warwick Davis?
Availability.
I don't know. It's just it was not bothering me. It's just funny because I had no idea Deep Roy was in it, and then he's in this. Plus, he probably, like you said, availability and willing to do it for a case of beer.
Or yeah, do what you got to do. But I did think it was interesting who they did interview when they were able to for like the different things.
Not many of them.
That was definitely interesting.
People besides Billy D.
Yeah. Which I can see too, because I know specifically like recently a lot of the times people that like work for Lucasfilm or
Gag or
ILM have to get specific okays from the company now to actually like do interviews or go on podcasts or anything like that now. So that may have led into it, and maybe like Billy D just didn't like give a crap, and he was like,
"He's Billy D.
I'll do it." He's like, "I do what I want."
Exactly.
But yeah, I would recommend this to anybody that loves 1980s sci-fi films, loves Star Wars. If you grew up throughout the 80s and 90s like we did, you would definitely enjoy this just for the nostalgia on it alone.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it.
I don't know.
I felt, like I mentioned earlier, a little arduous at times. Kind of like homework when you're like they're getting the stuff. You're like, I really don't care about what you're talking about here. It is 5 plus hours, which I'm fine with longer stuff. Don't get me wrong. Maybe this, if the DVD has chapters, or Blu-ray rather, it might have been better for me.
Oh yeah, yeah. The Blu-ray does have it has chapters, and it has it broken up into the years.
Yeah, that probably would have helped me out.
Yeah. But and then the music on this is also pretty cool, and I believe like they're selling like the soundtrack through New Retro Wave. And the website for it is 80sscifidoc.com. So there should be more info on their website with like any stuff related to this too. But that is going to do it for this episode. You guys can leave us a review on the podcast catcher of your choice if it allows you to do so. It helps us out a lot. So whether you have Spotify or Apple Podcasts, whatever else it may be. You can find the show on social media at Twitter, Instagram, on Facebook just by searching for HoloPod, on YouTube by searching for the Holomaneuver podcast. Individually, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter. I'm at Mark Bibbert, just my first and last name, MarcBibbert.
And you can find me just by searching my name, Michael Soren. Last name not spelled as it sounds. It's Sawran. If you come across two, I'm the one who has a middle initial. Just don't follow that other one unless you like racist rants. Terrible at taking pictures.
Yes. And our editor is Vactor. You can find him at Vactor on all of the social media places. And then you can email us at holdopod@gmail.com. But as always, we are grateful to George Lucas for creating the Star Wars universe.
Woohoo! Thank the maker. Went Pillsbury Doughboy with that one.